without objection.
Mr. President, it was 158 years ago tomorrow. Abraham Lincoln delivered what I believe was the greatest speech ever uttered by an American. He'd been asked to say a few words at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg. 4 months had passed since the great armies of the North and South had clashed on that hallowed ground. They fought for 3 days in the searing July heat. When the slaughter finally ended, the battlefield lay covered with the bodies of 50,000 dead and wounded Union and Confederate officers and soldiers. It was the bloodiest battle in the hellish Civil War. What good could possibly come from such butchery and sorrow? What great purpose had been worth such staggering loss? Those were the questions which Abraham Lincoln pondered on his train ride to answer in Gettysburg. He spoke for less than 3 minutes, 271 words in all. In those 3 minutes, he redefined the war not as a battle for territory or property, but for human dignity and equality. He gave us a profound, simple, new definition of democracy: government of the people, by the people, and for the people. He said the fallen soldiers had done all they could do. They had given their last full measure of devotion to ensure democracy did not perish from this earth. Now, Lincoln said, it was left to us, the living, to advance their unfinished business, their unfinished work, in his words, to salvage from all that death a new birth of freedom. He said that our Civil War was testing whether a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal can long endure. An important question then, an important question to this day. Can our democracy endure? It's a question that Lincoln pondered not just at Gettysburg, but throughout his life. 25 years before Gettysburg, Lincoln was giving a speech to the Young Men's Lyceum in Springfield, Illinois. He was a young lawyer and a newly elected state legislator, 29 years old. It was January of 1838, and it too was a challenging time. Economic anxiety was high following a stock market panic. There was growing violence in the America of that day. Abolitionists were being killed by pro-slavery defenders. Black people and others were being lynched with alarming frequency in the South. Lincoln feared that what he called the justice of the mob might replace the rule of law. Sound familiar? In a time of such anxiety, he questioned whether people might elect a despot who would use his power to tear down the institutions of our democracy rather than preserve them. In the most famous passage, he warned that if American democracy were ever to perish, quote, "It must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher." I heard those words quoted by a thoughtful member of the House of Representatives on the night of January 6th, 2021, after the mob that attacked this Capitol had gone and Congress had returned to complete our duty to certify the electoral ballots and declare Joe Biden President of the United States. The weapons and military programs that we will debate in the coming days are important. They're essential to protect America. But weapons alone cannot save us if we don't understand what we are fighting to defend. There is only one sure way to preserve American democracy, Lincoln told us. We must know our history. We should study that Declaration of Independence and Constitution, he said, as if they were a Bible, so that we revere the principles which build our democracy. Our democracy can't survive if we reject the great proposition for which so many died at Gettysburg, that all people are created equal. Our democracy cannot survive if we decide we will abide by the rule of law only when it suits us. Our democracy will not endure if we see each other as enemies, rather than as friends and fellow citizens of one nation that we all love. We've seen a demonstration of that particular issue this week in the House of Representatives. In his book, Lincoln at Gettysburg, Gary Wills wrote, "Up to the Civil War, the United States was referred to as a plural noun, as the United States are a free country. After Gettysburg, it became singular. The United States is a free country. As it says above your head, Mr. President, e pluribus unum, from many, one. As we look forward to celebrating our national holiday of Thanksgiving, perhaps we can try a little harder to hear those mystic chords of memory, what a phrase, that unite us as one people. Even if that fiery trial of civil war, President Lincoln had the courage to look forward with hope. In his 4 short years as president, he laid a foundation that enabled America to enter in the next few decades an industrial age. But another new age is on the horizon, and for America to lead the transition once more, we need to balance the demands of our global economy with the help of our global ecosystem. I think about that Gettysburg Address and the fact that in one weak moment I was invited to give the commemorative address at Gettysburg on November 19th, many years ago. And I set out to try to say whatever I had to say in 271 words. I think I did a fair job, but I would just give myself a passing grade at best. But it was a complete shock to the audience when I stopped at 271 words. And I said that Lincoln taught us that a speech doesn't have to be eternal to be immortal. Perhaps this speech is neither, but it was my best effort. In our lives as public servants, we're called on to speak very often, and I'm reminded time and again the impact that Lincoln had with so few words to capture the moment, to give people hope, and to craft phrases which still endure to this day as some of the most masterful use of the English language one can imagine. Tomorrow, I hope we can take a moment to recall our childhood education when we were taught that Gettysburg Address, to read it, perhaps to recite as what we can of it, and to believe that even in these dark times which we face, they were even darker when that speech was delivered and this nation endured. Mr. President, I yield the floor. Absence of quorum.
Thank you.